Hey there, welcome to Livewire. I'm your host, Luke Burbank. We have a bespoke show for you this week in which we'll be speaking to Avery Trufelman about her podcast, Articles of Interest, which explores fashion and clothes and the impact that it all has on us, even if we don't identify as fashion people. Then we're going to talk to author Camille Dungy about her latest book, Soil, the story of a Black mother's garden. It's the story of what happens when a Black family moves into an HOA community in Colorado and wants to grow wild, possibly banned plants in their yard. It's also about a ton of other stuff. Plus, we're going to get a tune from musical genius and maybe just as importantly, TikTok sensation, Olive Klug. We have a show for just about everyone this week. So if that describes you, if you're everyone, then stick around. It all gets started right after this. This episode of Livewire is brought to you by Progressive. Most of you aren't just listening right now. You're driving or cleaning, even exercising. But what if you could be saving money by switching to Progressive? Drivers who save by switching save nearly $750 on average, and auto customers qualify for an average of 7 discounts. Multitask right now. Quote today at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $744 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2022 and May 2023. Potential savings will vary. Discounts not available in all states and situations. Hey, Elena.
Hey, Luke. How's it going?
It is going very, very well, mostly because it's time to do one of my very favorite things of the week, which is to play a round of station location identification examination with you. Are you ready?
Ooh, yeah. How?
Okay. This is where I quiz Elena on a place in the country where Livewire is on the radio. She's got to figure out where we are talking about. The first of 2 twin port cities to be founded. So there's a couple of port cities. They're kind of considered twins. This place was known as the spot where sail meets rail.
Okay.
So kind of important, kind of transition between something that's on a boat and getting on the train.
Lake or a bay.
Yes.
Okay.
Lake is good. That's a good start. Okay, how about this? It's got both the first and last Carnegie libraries that were built in the state that it's in, which is the state of Wisconsin.
Okay, so it is the town that is the sister city of Duluth, Minnesota, but I don't know what the name of that town is.
I'm giving you the point. It's Superior, Wisconsin.
Superior.
You got it. Where we're on the radio on KUWS. So shout out to the folks in Superior, where sail meets rail. All right, ready to get to the show?
Let's do it.
Take it away.
From PRX, it's
This week, podcaster Avery Trufelman.
Gender is a construct. Pocket disparity is real. No matter what.
And author Camille Dungy.
I just started small. I started with a small little plot, and I kept going and growing and figured that the community would catch up to me because I was right.
Yeah.
With music from Olive Klug and our fabulous house band. I'm your announcer, Elena Passarello, and now the host of Livewire, Luke Burbank.
Hey, thank you so much, Elena. Thanks to everyone tuning in from all over the country, including Superior, Wisconsin. Of course, we asked Livewire listeners a question for this week's show in honor of Avery Trufelman and her great podcast, Articles of Interest. We asked the Livewire crowd, what's an article of clothing that you can't seem to let go of? And we are going to hear those responses coming up in a minute. First, though, we got to kick things off with the best news we heard all week. This is our little reminder at the top of the show that there is good news happening in the world, and we're here to talk about it. Elena, what is the best news you heard all week?
Okay, maybe stretching best news, but for me, it really totally counts. I got to take you to Muskegon, Michigan, birthplace of Iggy Pop, if I'm not mistaken, where there is an animal rescue nonprofit called Heaven Can Wait Animal Haven.
Solid name, by the way.
Right? Very, very good. And it's kind of their mission is to like keep cats out of euthanization shelters, particularly feral cats. So they manage these colonies all over the regions that have hundreds of cats in them. And I guess that's kind of expensive. And they're, really kind of a shoestring organization, all volunteer. I don't think they have a brick and mortar space, but they came up with a genius fundraising idea. Initially for this Valentine's Day, but I think you could do it anytime if you want. Just go to their Facebook page, Heaven Can Wait Animal Haven, and you can name one of their feral cats after your ex, and then they will neuter it.
That is so petty, but I totally support it in the service of making the lives of some cats better.
That's right. And trap, neuter, return is kind of the way to help the community, not just of cats, but of birds and rodents and other animals, and help control the pet population like Bob Barker always told us.
Oh, R.I.P.
But wait, there's more. This is not the only cool animal organization that has such a program. The San Antonio Zoo has a program where you can pay $10 to name a cockroach that will then get fed to one of the reptiles in their reptile house. You can also pay $25 to name a rodent who will, get fed to one of the reptiles. Or if you're interested in a veggie option, $5 you could name some form of vegetable that will then become food for a velociraptor or whatever is the name of a reptile. I think that's a dinosaur.
I love this sort of full circle nature of this because let's just say, you fall in love with whomever and then you do one of those things where you name a star for them, which is totally ridiculous as a concept. And then when things don't work out, you name a watermelon for them that's being eaten by a hippo.
That's right. Although I would kind of be into having like a cockroach named after me that then gets fed to a really cool snake. Like that would not make me sad.
Honestly, if you're somebody like me, if they're just talking about me and thinking about me, I feel like it means something.
No such thing as bad press.
Right. If you took the time to name a cockroach after me and feed it to something else, I'm still living in your head rent free. I've also got animals involved in my best news that I saw this week. It takes us to Australia, to Queensland specifically, where a 12-year-old young person named Rosie Whiteman was in her yard. She was cleaning out her guinea pig's cage. Guinea pig, a black and white guinea pig named Maxi Bon. Maxi Bon, a popular ice cream sandwich in Australia. This is all on CCTV, by the way. That's why we know so much about exactly what happened in this moment. Rosie's out there cleaning the cage. She turns her eye away from Maxi Bon, who's just like chilling in the grass for a minute, and is working on the cage, and then looks back and realizes that a giant snake has grabbed Maxi Bon, the guinea pig. And this is where 12-year-old Rosie Whiteman just goes into God mode. She reaches down and grabs the snake by the tail and just starts spinning around like a dervish with like fully extended snake with Maxi Bon like in its clutches, like some kind of like crazy centrifuge situation. What I love about the CCTV footage is you can see in Rosie's 12-year-old face, this is the last thing she wants to be doing. But also she wants to save Maxi Bon. Like she's kind of like crying, but also looking very tough as she's doing this incredible thing. And apparently screaming really loudly, which we don't pick up on the tape because her parents come running out. They're like in their pajamas because it's Saturday morning. Everyone was kind of sleeping in. Her dad like grabs the snake and separates Maxi Bon from the snake and like throws the snake. And like everyone takes a minute. They go back in the house. They check on Maxi Bon. Maxi Bon is apparently completely fine.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, is getting all kinds of amazing treats and cuddles right now, according to Rosie. Rosie learned that she has, like some internal kind of toughness and fortitude. Like, how would you ever know you could do that until you were in the moment of it happening?
She's like one of those moms that lifts the car.
Precisely. This is the part, too, that I like, because I don't know if this is an Australian thing or what, but they also checked on the snake.
Aw, how's the snake?
The snake's fine. The snake ended up in the neighbor's yard, and this is like a very Australian way to put it. her dad, named Luke, by the way, solid name. Luke said he had thrown the snake into a neighbor's garden. Before going to remove it later, he found the snake, quote, I'll spare you the accent, wrapped up in a bamboo tree. It was in perfectly good nick.
Oh.
So even the snake made it out of this situation. Everything turned out okay down there in Queensland, and that's the best news that I heard all week. All right, let's get our first guest on over. She is the host and creator of what I think might be one of the best podcasts going in America right now. It's called Articles of Interest. And ostensibly it's about clothing, but it really ends up kind of exploring all this other fascinating stuff, like what do orange jumpsuits really say about the way that we incarcerate people? Or what's the history of pockets? And why is it that they still can't really make that like high-tech closet that Alicia Silverstone's character Cher uses in the movie Clueless? The New Yorker calls Avery Trufelman relentlessly delightful, and we completely agree. Here's our interview with Avery, recorded at the Holt Center for the Performing Arts in Eugene, Oregon. Avery, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
I have been a fan of your work for a long, long time, and particularly love this show, Articles of Interest. You said in one of the episodes that when you were younger, you didn't really understand fashion or like fashion shows, you know, runway shows, which I don't know if anybody does.
Yeah, exactly. You see someone going down a runway wearing like, you know, a fuzzy orb, and you're just like, why? What is that? There's no context for it. It was never anything that resonated with me. I don't know. I don't know of many like children or young people who love a garment that lives on a runway entirely out of context. We like things that are worn by our favorite musicians or in movies or things that have a story behind them. And I realized you have to do a lot more background research to sort of get to the place where you can like see a garment in the abstract.
What changed for you? Was it going to like a museum, I think you said?
Yeah. I went to a museum exhibit, because that's the other thing, right? I feel like runway shows and fashion there are all these hang-ups that we have about our bodies and our age and just the way that good-looking people are supposed to look. And I think it distracts from the actual pleasure of clothing. So I love seeing fashion in museums because it gets rid of a lot of those hang-ups. And I saw an exhibit when I was 16 years old at the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco about the work of Vivienne Westwood. And I'd never heard of her before. And that's when I was like, oh my God, she designed punk. And punk was like designed by a designer. It was sold in a fancy shop. And it was like, I just couldn't believe, that was mind-blowing. I was like, this is what fashion designers do. Like, they gave us this language. The reason I can wear this, like, see-through shirt right now, and it's considered, like, okay, is in part because of punk and what she made. And it's, like, trickling down through the years, and it impacts us all. That's, like, so cool. And that was one person.
Yeah, I feel like even the term fashion to describe your podcast is a little bit misleading, because what I think the show is really about is the way that the things that we tend to wear are the result of a ton of like downstream that's been just going on forever.
Well, when you think about it, so much of fashion is determined by cloth, material, technology, sourcing, labor. I mean, the actual reasons that we wear what we wear and why we like what we like are so rooted in like our economics, our environment. It's fascinating. It's an amazing lens to see the world, and it's a huge industry, you know? Like, I always get such a kick out of like walking down a street and looking at all the commercial shops and being like, wow, most of these places sell clothes. Like, that is what most of commerce is for people. And so when we dismiss it or like say we don't care about it, it's like, that's a lot to not care about.
This is Livewire from PRX, and we are talking to podcaster Avery Trufelman. When we return, she is going to break down the great pocket disparity in America and what can be done about it. That's coming up right after this short break.
If there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of enjoying alcohol, it's with ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/livewire to get 15% off your first order when you use LiveWire at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/livewire and use the code LiveWire at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
Welcome back to Livewire from PRX. I'm Luke Burbank here with Elena Passarello. We are listening back to a conversation we recorded with podcaster Avery Trufelman. We recorded this live at the Holt Center for the Performing Arts in Eugene, Oregon. Let's jump right into maybe your biggest banger. If you were Bon Jovi, this would be your Living on a Prayer. Pockets. Where did they come from? Why don't we let women have them? What is going on with pockets?
Pockets. I mean, how much time do you have? I feel like...
All night.
Okay. So let me just say that gender is a construct. Pocket disparity is real. Like, no matter what. Like, and it's really fascinating because I have a friend who, it's true. I have a friend who's like, I keep losing my phone. I'm so dumb. And I'm like, let me see your pockets. What's going on with your pockets? And they just they don't fit anything. It is wild that we still have this. And the interesting thing is, women used to have pockets. Women used to have really big pockets, especially when we had big poofy dresses. And there are all these stories about, women putting pieces of cake to save for later and little sewing kits and things like that. And then this is really long story short. After the French Revolution, big voluminous dresses were not as in style. It was cool to be sort of sleek and sort of poverty chic. When you see Jane Austen movies or Bridgerton and they're wearing these form-fitting little shift things, they're trying to look very Roman or Greek and they're looking very simple. And then they're like, oh, there's no room for a pocket in here. And so they carried these little pouches. And the fascinating thing is it was seen as very liberating. So it's like, well, I don't carry around cake for later. I don't carry around a sewing kit. I'm out. I'm partying. I'm having fun. Right. Which I think is really fascinating because it reminds me of, long nails that don't let you do much with your hands or high heels that don't let you walk very far. These things that are actually limiting, but they are liberating in some ways because it is such a luxury to not do anything and to look like you don't have to do anything. And so that was the big debate.
Yeah, there were pocketists and anti-pocketists.
That was their name. And apparently the media was pumping it up. They were like, are you a pocketist or an anti-pocketist? Which is the interesting thing about fashion, right? I think in our minds, we imagine that fashion gets dictated from on high, that, someone's like, green is out, purple is in. But that's not what happens. We all experience fashion all the time in our own lives. And it's that feeling when you look at your closet and you're like, I don't know what to wear. I don't have anything to wear. That's fashion working on you because that means you've changed, your circumstances have changed, your body has changed, something has changed, and now you need new clothes.
You also had an incredible episode about ballet shoes, point shoes specifically, and just the process of breaking in a ballet shoe, how unbelievably painful it is for the dancers, and how somebody spent a bunch of time inventing a more durable, less painful ballet shoe, and the ballet community turned their back on it initially.
Yeah, they won't use it. They're like, this goes against everything. And to me, I was like, whoa, what is up with that? What? But there's so many lessons in there about, I don't know, the ways that we cling to tradition. And, fashion is not just what we wear in casual society. It's also that is a fashion in this industry. Like for a ballet dancer, they're like, this is what we do. It's not logical. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, this is our tradition. And I cannot tell you how many people reached out to me and they're like, oh, we do the same thing in skateboarding. We do the same thing in, like name whatever. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't know why we like wear this stuff, but we do. It's never quite yoked with practicality. Mm-hmm. There's always like some tradition, some social element. It's really fascinating.
But something I didn't know until I listened to that episode was that the idea of the ballet shoe is a sort of extension of the dancer and an elongation of them, which then gets to the issue of dancers of color and the fact that a pink ballet shoe may not work for that. And so then you have someone hand painting everyone's shoes so that it matches their body style.
At the Dance Theater of Harlem for decades, they used makeup and they painted their shoes to make it match their skin. Point came about because it was supposed to look like a woman was like floating, she was supposed to be some sort of otherworldly being, and so it wasn't supposed to look like she was wearing like this right. shoe, this like stilt. It was supposed to be a part of her. So yeah, Dance Theater of Harlem painted all their shoes to match. I mean, they were a little fanatic about it. It was like it matches their skin tone perfectly. It's an amazing effect. It's so beautiful. And mass-produced point shoes haven't been available in colors other than pink until 2017. It's wild.
That feels late in the game.
It's a little late in the game. It's kind of amazing.
Okay, from foot prison to prison.
Yes.
You have an episode.
Transition.
Thank you very much. Professional broadcaster checking in. You did a collaboration with the phenomenal podcast Ear Hustle about what inmates wear in prison and how that's changed over the years, and it also involves a guy named Bob Barker that I didn't expect, not the Price is Right guy,
Bob,
rest in power, but a different Bob Barker who makes all of the prison outfits. What's sort of the story of why it is that inmates dress the way that they do, or are forced to dress the way they do?
Well, the fascinating thing is that I've watched movies. I know that like people who are in jail have to wear a uniform, but it actually isn't like necessary. And in fact, there were many decades in America where people who were incarcerated didn't wear uniforms. And it was,
in San Quentin, right?
Yeah, in San Quentin in the 80s. Like we talked to a guy who was there on the inside, and he was like, yeah, you used to be able to like wear whatever you want. They had dry cleaning in the prison, and you could like, and it was, and he talked about how powerful it was to be able to like dress up, to like be himself and express himself. And so it's all really, really arbitrary. I mean, once you start noticing it and you're like, man, the uniforms are all so different institution to institution. And it's because a lot of them come from this one catalog called the Bob Barker catalog. And you can order it. You can get the catalog. You can look at it online. You can flip through it. And that shows you everything that you could order if you were supplying a prison. So they're like orange jumpsuits, blue jumpsuits, separates. They still sell the stripes. I mean, it's
wow.
The places that have...
That's when you know you're at an old school prison.
Yeah, wow. No, the clothing suppliers that have catalogs would shock you. I'm working on an episode about priestly vestments, and you can actually get a catalog for priest vestments, and they use actual male models, like, posing like priests, and they're like posing next to coffins with their like matching vestments, but that's not even the funniest part. The funniest part is you're like, oh, that's like a beautiful garment. Oh my God, it's $5,000. It's like so expensive. But yeah, we all wear clothes. Fashion matters. Like these places buy catalogs.
You say in one of your episodes that you feel like your personal opinion, and this is for you, not telling everyone how to live, but that clothing is an investment. Do you feel comfortable giving us your best guess at the net worth of your closet?
Oh my God.
Let me rephrase that I'm going to give you slightly an out. Do you think if you were to add that up, you would be kind of shocked actually at what you've invested?
No. Although that's the thing. I feel like the way that I put it is ever since doing all this, like once you once I started researching clothes and being like, oh my God, they're all such special little snowflakes. Like, I love them. Whenever I buy something, my salient feeling is like, oh, now I have this pet to take care of. Because that is kind of how I feel about my clothes. I'm like, well, you got to get them cleaned and you got to get them repaired. I mean, I keep my stuff for like a long time. Yeah, I invest in my clothes, but I also invest like time in them. And I think the collective value of my closet, I'm not like giving a lot of things away. So I think it would be very upsetting for me to look at the collective cost of my closet. No, it's not upsetting. I'm proud. Clothing matters. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Have you ever met anybody or talked to anybody on the podcast who has successfully done this Charlie Brown strategy where you wear the same thing every day? I think Steve Jobs did it too, but let's stick with Charlie Brown. Like, have you in real life encountered somebody who has successfully employed that 4 of the same shirt, 4 of the same pants, and I just wear that every day?
The thing is, Steve Jobs' shirt was Issey Miyake. It's like a very nice designer brand, and that's why he looked so good all the time. And they're like, see, this man didn't even care. It's like, no, he cared. He just pretended not to care.
But your point, Avery, is that it takes a certain amount of intention to be so seemingly kind of blasé about it.
Okay. The thing that I say is that clothing is the mediator between our internal world and our external world. It's not just like, hey, this is who I am. It's also how the world sees you. It's also about what the weather is. It's also like what's happening in the zeitgeist. So I don't think anything can just like stay forever. I know people who like have uniforms that are in periods, but I don't know. We all change, and change is good. I mean, I feel like the closest I can imagine is like people who have like a really good sense of personal style. Like Patti Smith's style has not changed in like decades, but she's not wearing the same, clothes. She just like knows herself really well and has like established this look. But I think the uniform, it's just so easy to get bored with a uniform.
It's just not real. Like,
I don't think it like lives in the world. Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting idea that you present of the clothing being this kind of membrane between us and the outside world. Avery Trufelman, the podcast is Articles of Interest. Thanks so much for coming on Livewire. You're amazing.
Me.
That was Avery Trufelman right here on Livewire. Make sure to go check out the latest episodes of her incredible podcast, Articles of Interest. Hey, special thanks this episode to Carol Gabrielli and also Vicky Reitenauer of Portland, Oregon. Carol and Vicky are extremely important members of the Livewire listening community because they're also donating to Livewire. And those donations are how we're able to keep the show going week in and week out. So big thanks to Vicky and Carol for supporting the program. This is Livewire. Of course, each week we like to ask our listeners a question related to Avery's conversation about clothes and fashion. We asked, what is an article of clothing you can't seem to let go of? Elena has been collecting up those responses. What are you seeing?
Well, here's what I think is the ultimate classic answer from Brett. Brett says, I have never let go of my old concert t-shirts because they're a snapshot in time, and that is 7,000% true.
That's at the core of all of this, I think, right?
Yeah, I think that's just like the classic thing to keep, other than like, like a motorcycle jacket that will never
See the back of a motorcycle.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
I have a t-shirt that says The Golden Gopher, which was a bar in LA that I loved. But I think even more than the bar, I just loved being 26. And when I see that t-shirt that's now just got all kinds of holes and deteriorations, I think, yeah, but that reminds me of a time when everything was potential in my life. Well, what are some of the articles of, let's just say, interest to some of the Livewire listeners?
How about this one from Mindy? All the crazy business casual clothes I used to wear to the clubs in the early 2000s. It was a crazy time to be a millennial. Now, instead of bar hopping, I wear them to work. Do you remember this, Mr. Burbank? You used to put on like a pair of like kind of dressy black pants and like a fitted like cornflower button-up short sleeve shirt. That's what you would wear with your chunky dress shoes?
Yes, I do. That's the very tail end of me ever being found in the club, as they say, was probably that era of the clubs existing. I'm going on a trip coming up, and there is a rumor because it's somebody's birthday that we may have to visit the club, and I'm already dreading it.
What do you wear now? I don't even know.
Something business casual. I don't know. I'm going to go dig through my closet. What's something else that one of our listeners just can't seem to get rid of?
Amy says, never getting rid of anything from my Y2K era. Every mini skirt, every baby tee, because it's now considered vintage. I will sell them one day. The fact that this fashion is coming back is some kind of indicator that I need to be set on an ice floe. Because when it happened, I did not subscribe. I was old enough to be like, you know what, I'm going to stay in my skirts that have like one hem and, keep my midriff covered because I am 27.
The thing that I'm trying to achieve, probably unsuccessfully, on the subject of fashion is I'm trying to imagine a photo 20 years later of me in the outfit.
Uh-huh.
And can you tell what exact era it was? And if you can't, that is kind of a win.
Yeah.
What's something else that our listeners just refuse to part with?
Here's one from Mason. Mason says, I have a denim button-up shirt that I have owned for literal decades. It's so starched it doesn't move. It can stand up on its own, but I can't let it go. Denim never really goes out of style, right? And that, I think, is true. Like, I wish I had more articles of clothing that would just last for 600 years, and you could just Charlie Brown your way through the rest of your life.
Thanks to everybody who sent in their responses to our listener question. We've got another one for next week's show coming up in just a moment. In the meantime, let's welcome our next guest over. She's the author of 4 collections of poetry and 2 collections of essays and has been a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, as well as a Guggenheim Fellow and the winner of the American Book Award. Booklist calls her latest book, Soil, the story of a Black mother's garden, a significant, beautiful, meditative, and wholly down-to-earth memoir. This is Camille Dungy, who joined us on stage at the Patricia Reeser Center for the Arts in Beaverton, Oregon. Camille, you've got fans here.
Yeah.
Hi, fans!
I have to say, Camille, I found this book so engrossing and so illuminating. You, in the beginning of the book, you're talking about going to Fort Collins, Colorado, where you're going to be hired as a professor, your husband also a professor, and you're looking around maybe for real estate, and there's all this cottonwood blowing around, and you describe it in the book as a white mess. Would that also describe the general demographics of Fort Collins, Colorado?
Yes.
Was that an intentional?
That was intentional. I am a poet,
Yes.
So I like that sort of double entendre.
I was picking up what you were putting down. I know you have family history in Fort Collins and you're from Colorado originally, but what was the sort of Fort Collins that you and your family found yourself coming to in 2013?
Right. I like to describe the general whiteness of Fort Collins as my husband is a big cyclist, and when he goes out on a ride, every time someone says, "Hi, Ray!" He's completely covered in all of his gear, but they know it's the big black guy. That's Ray, right? That's how white this place is, because everyone's a cyclist in Fort Collins, but not everyone's Ray.
You write in the book about, you buy this home and you are sort of looking around the yard, which is a lot of hardscape and stuff like that, and you embark on something called like a prairie project for yourself. What was that exactly?
The Prairie Project was this desire to reclaim the landscape and rewild it. And so it was just all sod and rock and just like a couple straggly junipers. And there was nothing of variety. It was a really monochromatic landscape. And so I wanted in this space to plant more native plants, to allow more low water plants, and to allow this kind of wildness and also, honestly, brownness for considerable parts of the year into the space that had just been monochromatically green.
Mm-hmm. But this also is within an HOA.
Right.
I want you to know, Elena, can you honor this? I wrote into the script, pause for groans.
Yeah. 100%.
Camille, I'm curious though, what were the rules of this HOA around the Prairie Project and what you wanted to do?
Right, there used to be a woman in our neighborhood who would walk around the houses and measure how tall people had let their grass grow.
Oh, man.
So, right, when I was like, let's just let the sunflowers stay up all year and throw in some, could be weeds, could be plants, you choose, that was not really necessarily gonna fly. Luckily for me, the town has progressed, and I just started small. I started with a small little plot, and I kept going and growing and figured that the community would catch up to me because I was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they did, right?
They did.
What's the current
They did.
rules around that stuff?
The HOA has dropped their rules about requiring standardized landscaping. Yay!
Yeah.
And the town of Fort Collins now actively incentivizes the placement of xeriscaping and low water plants and native gardening. And so, in fact, I'm like a little bit bummed because they now have this rebate program that if you do it, you get money, but I'm mostly done now and I didn't get to capitalize on that.
In the book, you mentioned something that I had really not thought about, which is the kind of impact you think of World War I and World War II on this very homogeneous idea of like an American yard.
So much of what happens, especially if you're using pesticides and herbicides, it was just leftover stuff from munitions and armaments and things, and we just had to figure out a way to use these chemical weapons in non-combative or not combative against humans uses. And so this excess of materials got turned into this American industry of these perfect, highly chemically altered landscapes. And I just didn't want to participate in that kind of warfare.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is Livewire Radio. We are coming to you this week from the Patricia Research Center for the Arts here in Beaverton, Oregon. We're talking to Camille T. Dungy. Her book is Soil, the story of a black mother's garden. Now, if I understand right, your parents were doing something along these lines in California when you were a kid.
I grew up in Southern California in the 1970s, and there's a story I tell in the book about the community board coming to my house and telling my parents that they had to do something about their yard.
Wow.
And my father's response was, well, aren't you concerned about the ecology? We are very worried about the ecology, so we think we're just going to leave it as it is. Which at that time was just dirt and invasive weeds. Because they were making decisions that, you can't move into a landscape and immediately alter things correctly. And so they were waiting to see the light patterns and figuring out what the soil was and how to create a low water garden, and it wasn't going to be an overnight fix.
Did they ultimately prevail in getting to create their their yard?
They did. They had a beautiful yard in that home, and it had a lot of native plants and fruit trees and things flowering all the time. And it was I think maybe that's part of why it seemed possible to me to do this in Colorado, was that I grew up as one of the only black people in my town of Irvine with also this weird yard that stood out and looked different than most of the things that were around. And so when we landed in Fort Collins, it seemed like the thing to do.
This book covers so much stuff. It covers your and your family's experience during the pandemic. It talks about the killing of black citizens in this country by the police, and it talks about gardening. But it's not just about gardening. It's about gardening as a black person in America. And obviously you can only speak to your particular experience, but I'm curious how you think it's different for you as a black person in America gardening than, say, one of your white neighbors doing the same kind of thing.
Well, for me, when somebody looks at my yard and thinks, oh goodness, she's letting that go, and what's that going to do to our property values and et cetera, when then I walk out and I'm a black person, that is an added sense of cultural tension, because there's already very frequently an idea that when the black people move into your neighborhood, your property values are going to go down. And so by taking this chance to create a very different kind of landscape outside my home, within a cultural landscape that has that level of intolerance, there's a lot more friction and tension for me.
Can you read a little bit from the book here? It's a section where you're talking about a few things, but one of them is your daughter Callie is working on a project that you're kind of going to go behind and edit for her. By the way, how lucky to have a decorated and talented writer as a parent.
She doesn't think it that.
When you have to, when you have a school project, but you mentioned very clearly in the book that you're not writing it for her, but you're just taking a look at it. But could you read a little bit from that part?
A 2008 revision of the Oxford Junior Dictionary, a reference book aimed at children ages 7 to 9, removed 50 words, including minnow, mussel, ferret, wren, bloom, sycamore, heron, beaver, lark, magpie, bluebell, buttercup, carnation, clover, crocus, dandelion, lavender, pansy, tulip, violet, and blackberry. So much earth-grown language. Language helps us shape our imagination, helps us shape perspective. Language helps us reach toward empathy and understanding. Language helps us learn about history, our place in the now, and the possibilities for our future. A future where there may, in fact, be fewer sycamores, fewer varieties of buttercup, fewer mussels, fewer herons, fewer of what pollinates and thrives on clover, fewer beavers, fewer magpies, fewer blooms, or perhaps none at all. How dangerous these omissions could be for the development of the scope of children's imaginations and their connections to the living planet. The lexicographer's defense made a kind of sense. The dictionary contained only about 10,000 words. Language changes. The words children need to navigate the world also change. New words demanded attention. The lexicographers explained. Blog, broadband, celebrity, compulsory, vandalism, voicemail, chat room, biodegradable, endangered, cautionary tale, and the already essentially extinct capital B BlackBerry. The words that replaced earth-grown language connected children to commerce, urban living, the human-centered indoor world where many of us spend so much time. Farewell to the days of blooms and bluebells. If I limit my language, the way I articulate my perceptions of the world, the certain ways of being become impossible. If I freeze the dooryard hollyhocks in the moment before they grew unruly, I erase the vision of their whipping frenzy in the wind. The way they fling their seeds far from the pods, the way they dance along with the rhythms of the breeze.
Camille Dungy reading from her book, Soil, here on Livewire. I know that it's important to you to write about being a mother, which is something that I've heard you say can sometimes be left out of books about nature. Maybe they're so keyed in on the natural world that the life of the person writing and their family structure and things like that are not brought into the book. Why is it important to you?
Well, I think that factor of so much canonical environmental literature that just removes everybody, it's just like one dude alone on a mountain, like, it doesn't track for many of us. We have people in our lives. We have partners and children and elders and jobs. And like, we don't just get to go trekking through the woods by ourselves for hours and hours and hours without, like, if I try to do that, I have to have snacks, you know? So I just wanted to write that reality that reflected my own life, but also reflected, I think, the reality of so many of us. And if we don't have that connection in the literature we read, the empathy, the care, the sort of why we're looking at the world at all, which is to feel responsible to and for it, that starts to disappear. And so I wanted to build a true story.
You say in this book that you're of the opinion every politically engaged person should have a garden. Why do you say that?
Because you do need a place to stop and recharge, but also, honestly, gardens are incorrigible. Like, they like go through these cycles and you're like, didn't I already weed you? And that's kind of what being a politically active person feels like also.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like there are some things coming back that we thought we'd weeded out at one point. Well, Camille, this is an incredible book. I hope everybody gets a chance to read it. It's Soil, the story of a black mother's garden. Camille Dungy, thank you so much for coming on Livewire.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
so
you.
good to see you all.
That was Camille Dungy right here on Livewire. Her latest book, Soil, the story of a black mother's garden, is available right now. I'm Luke Burbank here with Elena Passarella. We have got to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to hear some music from internet sensation Olive Klug. Livewire is thrilled to be partnering with Portland's own Portal Tea this season. Formerly known as Tea Chai Tay, Portal Tea is the premier tea company in the Pacific Northwest. And they make one-of-a-kind, handcrafted tea blends like cinnamon churro chai and blueberry cream Earl Grey. Use the code LIVEWIRE, all lowercase, for 20% off at portaltea.co. Welcome back to Livewire from PRX. I'm Luke Burbank here with Elena Passarello. All right, we are going to get to our musical guest in just a moment. But before that, a preview of next week's show. We're going to be talking to Ken Jennings, who you probably know as the host of Jeopardy! Ken is also a writer, and he has a book out called 100 Places to See After You Die, a travel guide to the afterlife. Speaking of writers, we're also going to talk to the writer Erica Berry about wolves, the ones that live in nature, and then, honestly, maybe more critically, the ones that live in our minds. And we're also going to hear some music from incredible international rock and roll band Making Movies. And we are going to be looking to get your response to our listener question. Elena, what are we asking the Livewire listeners for next week's show?
We would like you to please describe your ideal afterlife. I don't know why I made a Dracula noise.
Dracula could be there, maybe.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Or at least Count Chocula.
Sure, Bela Lugosi might be there. You never know. All right, if you have thoughts on an ideal afterlife that you would like to share with us, go ahead and reach out on social media over there on Facebook or whatever they call Twitter now. You can find us at Livewire Radio. Okay, let's get to our musical guest this week. They've got a sound that is reminiscent of the golden age of American folk music, but with a uniquely modern lyrical sensibility. How modern? Well, they've gotten millions of views on TikTok, many of them from me. Their debut album, Don't You Dare Make Me Jaded, was recently released. Here is Olive Klug, who joined us on stage at the Holt Center for the Performing Arts in Eugene, Oregon. Olive, welcome to Livewire. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
What song are we going to hear?
So I've had a special request actually from Laura, who works at Livewire, to play a song that's not on my album because it is a bit more of a jaded song at times.
It would never fit on Don't You Dare Make Me Jaded.
Yeah, this is just a single. It's not on the album, but it's called Song About America. And I wrote it when I was on a solo tour through the United States. And that was when the drag ban was happening in Tennessee. And it was also when just a lot of talk was going on about banning gender-affirming care in a lot of states that I was driving through. And I was also at the same time getting reached out to by different companies to be like, oh, be in our Pride campaign for GoDaddy, which is my website host, which I was just like, this is just a really intense cognitive dissonance that I'm experiencing right now of there's this world where we're really accepted when it's corporations asking us to promote their stuff and then, not actually seen as human by politicians. And so, I don't typically write overtly political music. And so I'm actually a little nervous to play this song today because I'm like, this isn't normally what I do, but if I get a special request, I've got to fulfill it. So,
all right.
Yeah.
This is Olive Klug here on Livewire.
A sucker for convenient and fast. I swear Kansas lasts forever. Billboard calling me a sinner. All my thoughts were screaming at me through the last. Well, they grew me in a bubble, sheltered me from all that rubble, and said, baby, history is just the past. So I'm not even gonna try to write a song about America. It's too big and too daunting. On the south side of town, unmarked graves, Jesus saves, keep your credit up and your head down. You better keep your credit up and your head down. And now I'm passing in Tennessee, another place I'm scared to be, where they celebrate the cell and band the dress. While they hold the burning fork, she's boarded a train to New York, where she'll pay triple rent and learn how to test. But hey, everything's so different now with corporate pride campaigns and how Hollywood's just getting so diverse. But I'm not even gonna try to write a song about America, so I'll settle for a chorus and a verse. Stomach pains, boarded up the windows on the south side of town. Unmarked graves, Jesus says, keep your credit up and your head down. You better keep your credit up and your head down. City in the forest, cop can learn to kill. The one who blames the addict is the one who made the pill. 2 million in cages, yet we boast about free will. I feel like dying, but there's just too many hills. Oh, who the hell am I to write a song about America? But if anybody's listening, I will. I know things have gotta change, I don't know how. Strike the match, we'll start from scratch. Just keep your head up high, don't drop your crown. I think we're coming back around. think we're coming back around. I think we're coming back around. I think we're coming back, we're coming back, we're coming back, we're coming back, we're coming back
That was Olive Klug right here on Livewire. Their album, Don't You Dare Make Me Jaded, is out now. That is going to do it for this week's episode of the show. A very big thanks to our guests, Avery Trufelman, Camille Dungy, and Olive Klug.
Laura Haddon is our executive producer, Heather D. Michelle is our executive director, and our producer and editor is Melanie Sevchenko. Eben Hoffer and Molly Pettit are our technical directors, and our house sound is by B. Neil Blake. Trey Hester is our assistant editor. Our marketing and production manager is Karen Pan. Rosa Garcia is our operations associate. Jackie Ibarra is our production fellow. And Becky Phillips is our intern. Our house band is Ethan Fox Tucker, Sam Tucker, A.L. Alves, and A. Walker Spring, who also composes our music. This episode was mixed by Molly Pettit and Trey Hester.
Additional funding provided by the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation. Livewire was created by Robin Tenenbaum and Kate Sokoloff. This week, we would like to thank members Carol Gabrielli and Vicky Reitenauer of Portland, Oregon. For more information about our show or how you can listen to our podcast, head on over to livewireradio.org. I'm Luke Burbank. For Elena Passarello and the whole Livewire team, thank you for listening, and we will see you next week. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a piping hot episode of Livewire delivered right to your heart and ears each week? Well, guess what? That can happen when you subscribe to the Livewire podcast feed, and you'll get the joy of surprising conversation every week. So go ahead and do it. It's super easy. You click on the button at the top of your podcast app, and bam, you are Livewire subscribed. And if you're still, feeling the love, if you're enjoying the show, hey, maybe you could hook us up and leave us a quick review. That'll help more people find out about Livewire. And thank you.